Hello, folks. Welcome back to Non-Toxic Environments Live. This is Andy Pace, your host. And this week we have another wonderful guest with us, Michael Conneely with Greenside Design Build. And before we get to that, let me just do a little housekeeping here. As you know, in order to see these shows live, you need to be a member of our Circle community. It's free to join. We want you to come here and participate as much as you'd like. Just lurk, just listen, whatever you want to do, just to be a part of our community. Obviously, what happens is once we record these, they'll get uploaded as a podcast audio. They'll get uploaded directly to the Circle community so you can watch it at your own speed later on. But if you'd like to be a part of the conversation and actually ask questions, you may certainly do so by joining the live stream and then just sending us a chat. So with that, I'd like to introduce this week's guest. And Michael, I'll bring you on the screen here. Hey, there you are.
How you doing, Andy?
I am wonderful. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, first off, I've got to say, and if hope everybody has listened to the show so far. We posted it here as soon as it came out. I was on Michael's show, his podcast last week, and boy, we had a lot of fun.
You sure did. It was good. There's a lot of positive feedback I've gotten so far.
So wonderful. I have to ask you, your co-host for that show, and if you haven't seen it, folks, look up the show. And I've got it linked here in the stream. It's called Level Heads Podcast. So your co-hosts, how did you get to know those guys?
Well, I'm a custom home builder, and I am a member of a Builder 20 group. The Builder 20 group is a group that's sponsored by the National Association of Home Builders. And they're these groups of builders that are in non-competing markets, right? And there's a number of them all over the country. And there's a limit on how many members can be in the group. Obviously, it's 20. So I joined one. I was invited to join this group a couple years ago by another fellow member, Dan Duvall. He invited me in. And one of the members of the group when I came to my first meeting was Zane Ellis from Collective Build Company. So that's where I first met Zane. The other guy on the podcast, the other host, Jamie Verdura, I actually met him through Instagram.
Oh.
I had followed him for a while. He does a lot of great work out there on the West Coast in California. And he looked real. You know, he didn't look like one of these kind of fake Instagram people. So
right.
I contacted him and I asked him, hey, would you be interested in joining a Builder 20 group? So he said, sure. So we sent out all the invites to him, and he came to one of our meetings, and he was accepted as a member. So now we're all members of this Builder 20 group. Well, the name of our Builder 20 group is called the Level Heads. Yeah. Nice. So we decided one evening, perhaps over some scotches, that we were going to start a podcast, and we were racking our brains to try and think of a good name, something that would be fitting, because although we tackle some serious subjects, we want to keep it lighthearted. We don't want to get too serious.
Right.
So, we said, hey, we're all members of the Level Heads Builder 20 group. This is where we met. This is what we should call the podcast. And it stuck. And that's kind of how we got the name.
Love it. Well, it's a great show. I know it really kind of geared towards, the B2B, to other contractors that are out there, but really anybody who has an interest in home building and construction would be really enjoy the show. So thank you for allowing me to come on and share some knowledge about healthy homes. And we even talked a little bit about whiskey, which, made me happy too. So
that's always fun to have a little bit of a light subject in there. But yeah, we mainly focus to the builder or construction community, but that's not our only focus. Right. We are going to bring on clients. We are going to bring on outside guests that are not involved in construction. We haven't gotten that far yet, but that's our goal. And I think having you on is actually probably a perfect segue to that, because we have so many clients that are asking about healthy home now, and it's getting away from the green. We talked about the differences between building a green home and a healthy home, where green is geared more towards efficiency, but healthy home is more towards the occupants and trying to reduce the toxins that are in the home when you build. So it was a great subject. You were a great guest to have on. It's going to be a good segue for us to bring in some, I'll call them laymen, I suppose would be the better term, normal
Sure.
people, right?
Sure. Well, it's always fun to talk about projects with clients. I did that on a podcast about a year and a half ago. I brought one of my clients in to talk about her project, how it went. Now that she was in the home for a couple of years, how's it going? And would they ever do it again? And of course, 100% yes, we'd do it again. So it is a lot of fun, very, very educational for those who are sort of on the fence about it. And so I think anytime you have an opportunity to get somebody who's not necessarily in the business, somebody who is just the experiencing the project from obviously from an owner's perspective, I think it's really important. And I think it's important to hear sort of the good, bad, and the ugly too, because, not everything is sunshine and rainbows and lollipops. It's difficult. And so I'm writing an article right now for a publication, and I have to talk about, the pros and cons of things, because I don't think it's fair just to tell everybody how wonderful it is without saying, but here are the downsides too.
That's a great point. And as professionals in the industry, sometimes we can become snowblind, so to speak, where we're looking at something all the time and we don't see maybe something that's right in front of us that the normal layperson or client would see.
Mm-hmm.
And to have their perspective and their feedback is so important, because it's a constant learning process. You're never stop learning when you're doing this.
Exactly.
And if we have those people and their set of eyes, the more set of eyes you have on something, the more things you're going to see. So that's why we like it.
100%. So before we get too far into this, just give everybody a little bit of history on Greenside and how you got into the business, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So I guess I have to go way back to the beginning. My father was a builder developer. I grew up on the sites. I had a broom in my hand when I was probably 10 years old. He had me doing everything, from punch lists to cleaning up. Eventually graduated to carpentry and excavation and sewer and water. So we did a lot of it, self-performed a lot of it on our own. Ran projects then for my dad. We built a lot of multifamily and semi-custom home projects, a little bit of light commercial work as well. But our bread and butter has always been the higher end custom homes. Mm-hmm. My business partner in Greenside is actually my cousin, John Fullard. We lovingly refer to him as Cousin Johnny. So John was actually born in Ireland and emigrated to the States in his early 20s. He's a carpenter by trade. He was a carpenter in Ireland. When he came here, he worked for my uncle, who was also a builder carpenter. He did that for a few years, and then he went out on his own for a little bit, framing houses as a carpenter contractor. He kind of got tired of that, and he came to work for my father then. So John and I were both running projects for my dad. And we did that for a good number of years. And eventually we both left my dad, and we both started building custom homes on our own. He had his separate company and I had my separate company, but we were always working together. We'd always have each other's back. Then in 2008, we all know what happened in 2008. New construction really dried up around the Chicago area. And John and I put our nail bags back on, joined forces, and started doing remodeling. And that's when Greenside was formed. And it's been going strong ever since. We started off doing a lot of remodeling, a couple specs, couple custom builds, and it's just, since then, it's blossomed into all custom work. And that's where we are today. So John and I both run the company, and we kind of divide and conquer. I'll take half the projects and he'll take half the projects, and we'll just go from there.
It's interesting you bring up that, the Great Recession, 2008 to 2012 or so. So you and I have both been in this business for quite some time, predating that, of course. I mean, I started this company in 92, 93. I remember that too. And I remember when new construction went down. It was the first time actually when new construction went down, remodeling went down too. I mean, everything. There was no money left in construction anywhere because nobody wanted to put money into a home that was just losing value sitting there.
Right.
However, as with all recessions, all mini recessions are all down economies. You know, the construction economy is cyclical. Usually, every 7 years or so, it's on a swing. Usually, what happens is during the times of lower business is it kind of weeds out a lot of the competition that really doesn't know what they're doing, but they were kind of taking advantage of the situation. And you illustrated exactly what I saw here too, with a lot of the really good contractors that were out there. They, the owners of these companies literally strapped on the tool belts again and started doing the work because that was your passion, that was your love before becoming an owner and doing all that work. I've got a good friend in the business up here, same thing. I mean, he builds custom homes, but when the recession hit, he started doing finished carpentry again just to make ends meet and to keep things going for his own employees and so forth. And that only made you stronger. All these companies who thought they were builders, they're gone. And now what's left are the core companies that knew what they were doing beforehand and just honed their skills during that time.
Yeah, and that's echoed throughout the country, where the guys that really knew what they were doing, guys and gals that knew what they were doing, they went back to the basics, strapped on the tool belt and went at it themselves, and it weeded out those. There was a lot of bankers that were building, a lot of accountants that were building. There was everyone building that time. Anyone could get a construction loan or a mortgage back. You just needed a pulse.
Right.
And it was all weeded out.
So here you are all these years later, and you're building custom homes. I've been involved in one or two projects of yours. One in particular was a healthy home project. I'm kind of curious because on the website you do talk a lot about passive home, and I assume during that time, during that recession and after that is probably when you started focusing on passive home a little bit. Now, for folks who aren't familiar with Passive House, it's actually a organization out of Europe, right? It's a European. It was brought to the U.S. and they have the U.S. Headquarters here now. But it's a model for building homes that's not only energy efficient, but I mean really material efficient as well. Correct?
Correct. Yes. So the governing body that I got my accreditation through for Passive House, I'm an accredited passive home builder, is FIAS. That's the name of the organization that does that sets all the standards and testing for a home to be passive level. Now it does come down to a great amount of it is efficiency, making your home efficient, but it does also get into the area of the comfort of the owner. And that's where you can see some crossover into the healthy home realm. Now, when we build a passive, and I have not built a passive house yet, I am dying to get a client that wants to go passive, right?
Sure.
It is not as prevalent here in the Chicago area as you would see on the coasts. Not to say that they don't do it here. It's just, it's not as prevalent. Actually, one of the first homes in the country, I believe, was in Illinois, first passive homes. But yeah, it did come over from Europe originally, and it's really taking hold in this country now. And I'm looking forward to meeting that first client that wants to go passive.
Well, it's kind of like finding that first client who wants to go healthy too. I know so many builders, and we talked about this in your podcast, who are really excited to get involved in a project, but they're just waiting for that one customer to come to them and say, "Can you do this?" And I think the quality builders, the ones who are still wanting to educate themselves in this industry, they're the ones who are looking forward to this. And passive houses is very difficult. I've been involved in a couple of projects over the years, and I mean, it's rigorous. The paperwork alone is difficult, but at the end of the day, you get a home that is, you know, I used this before, but it's pretty close to true, that you can heat your home with a hairdryer. I
Yes.
mean, the walls are either double stud walls or you know insulated concrete form walls, extremely efficient. You're putting all of your dollars into the walls, into the windows, into your insulation. Basically, the shell of the home is where you're spending the most on your budget, because everything else then just runs more efficiently when the shell is built to that standard.
Yeah, and simplest terms for passive house, is it's basically super insulated exterior walls, roof, a shell, so that your components inside can be downsized, so to speak, from a traditional built home, and it creates much more efficiency. So imagine you're just building a cooler.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically what you're building as a cooler, and the whole point is, owner occupant comfort while creating efficiencies and a less impactful home to the environment.
So, most of our listeners come from the United States, and I have clients all over the world, but I would say, 99% of them are right here in the States. You're focusing mainly on the northern Illinois suburbs, correct?
Yes, we're in the western suburbs of Chicago.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously a little bit different where you are and where I am up here in Wisconsin. In other parts of the country, I'm dealing with clients who are trying to build a home, and they have builders who don't even bother with with codes, because they realize that there's nobody there to check how their work is being done. And so it's a very difficult question to answer, but I mean, what do you see from the builders nationwide? You're involved in, and obviously in your builder groups, as their willingness to want to adopt things like passive home and healthy building and so forth. I mean, is this something that, generally speaking, is of interest, or is it only of interest in certain areas of the country?
I think it's something that's gaining interest, albeit slowly.
Mm.
There is a lot in the building industry, builders. There's a lot of, I've been doing this for years. I've been doing this for 20 years. It works. I'm not going to change,
Yeah.
and that kind of annoys me a little bit, because nobody knows everything. Just because you've been doing it a long time doesn't mean you know everything. I like your analogy in the podcast. I've been golfing for 40 years and I still suck at it. It's a great analogy. But there is a small movement. I can sense it, where people want to better their product. Builders want to build a better product and come across as they're more knowledgeable, right? So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the more we can push that, the better. I mean, when I first met you, I didn't know much about it. I didn't know anything about healthy homes, to be quite honest with you. I had a client that wanted to build a healthy home. She described what she wanted. She had hired you as a consultant, which was great. And I just learned a ton. And, not everything that she would want to put in the house as a healthy home was implemented because of budget or availability or what have you. But
Right.
a lot of it was. And it created a great home. I mean, the house is beautiful. I build on the high end residential custom homes, so people's budgets aren't always focused on being efficient or healthy.
Mm-hmm.
They're more concerned about how the house looks,
Right.
which is great. We build these beautiful homes, but if we can spend maybe just a little bit more, or transfer some of those dollars from finishes into different materials, then the budget stays the same, but you get the benefits of a healthier home or a more efficient home. And
Yeah.
that's going to happen through education. That's going to happen through platforms like this, where you get it out to the masses, and people find an interest in it. And then with more people start building healthy, then I can give a tip. Like, I can give a tip to somebody in my Builder 20 group, because I've done a healthy home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know Jamie in the podcast, he's got one coming up. He's going to be contacting you and have his client contact you for the one he's going to start.
Awesome.
So that's how the ball gets rolling in this realm.
So you brought up a good point before, and I'll just kind of expand upon that. In the building industry, there's a term we use called value engineering, right?
Yeah.
So value engineering has been, the nice way to put it is, if there's a budget for the project, let's say it's a $5 million project, and after going through all the bids, we're over budget. Value engineering is basically reducing the cost of certain materials and certain sections and trades and so forth, but maintaining the intent of the architect and the engineer. So we're bringing value to the project by reducing the cost, but still giving you really what the intent was of the architect. So that means maybe changing out a brand of a material because it's less expensive, changing out a thickness of a material because it'll still do the same thing. It just won't be as robust, but you'll save a lot of money. I like to use what's called healthy value engineering. And so to your point about shifting those dollars, let's say in a project, somebody really wants a healthy interior, but they also really, really want a real, Mediterranean slate roof. Well, the cost of doing the Mediterranean slate roof might be 8 times the cost of asphalt shingles. From a healthy home standpoint, are you going to get any improvement with the indoor air quality with that slate roof? Or no, you're not.
No.
You're gonna get aesthetic, you'll get longevity, sustainability, but you're not going to get healthy. And so you got to look at those dollars and say, well, I could probably spend you on the inside of the home, really impact the health of the occupants of the home, improving the occupants' health, just shifting those dollars over. So that's what I call healthy value engineering. And so we do a lot of that in the consulting world because, again, you develop these budgets and you have to then have somebody to sort of guide you to where's the best place to spend those dollars. And this is where I say building a healthy home should not cost $1 more than building a traditional home. The difference is, or you have to compare apples to apples, quality level to quality level. And so if you were to say, yeah, okay, so we acquiesced on the roof. We used a really nice 40-year dimensional shingle, but look at what we did on the inside. And it's the same dollars. And so, yeah, it's just a different way of looking at that budget.
I think that's really smart. And I think that's something, and I'm sure you do, you implement it when you're talking to clients and their builders. Because I think you probably have a little bit of an uphill battle when it comes to home builders, right? In this regard, because they're just unfamiliar. So if you can have, if one of your listeners or your clients can have a builder on board that's just open to listening and open to new ideas and learning, that's going to be half the battle right there. Vanity is such a funny thing. And most of my clients, they probably would go for that Mediterranean tile roof. But if I'm an educated builder and I explain to them in a structured way the benefits of building healthy, that it won't really cost them more money. It might be trading dollars, and maybe you don't need that fancy roof. Maybe the somewhat upgraded roof is just fine, and you're going to be breathing cleaner air. You're going to be feeling better because the components inside the house are just healthier.
Well, it comes down to the client themselves and what their personal degree of green is. Degree of Green is a program I created 25 years ago to help customers determine what's most important to them. And so back in the day, back in the mid 90s, when green became something more than just a color, we had to look at from a standpoint of what direction. And so is it environmentally friendly? Is it human friendly? Is it sustainable? Now, in those 3 groups, there's 27 different descriptors that will bring you to one of those 3 main groups. But if a client comes to you and says, Listen, I'm going through cancer treatments. I need a home that's completely toxin free, or I have a child at home with autism and they can't be around materials that are off gassing because it exacerbates his condition. And so that person's degree of green is going to be human health. The next person comes in and says, I just want to build a home that has the lowest carbon footprint because I don't want to add to the earth's problems, right? That's their personal degree of green. So that's the direction they're going to go. But then you have the client, which is a lot of custom home builders have, which is, you know, what's most important? What's the curb appeal of the home? You know, and I also resale value. And so if all the other homes in the area have that Mediterranean tile roof, I guess I have to have that too, because the resale of my home will be down if I use something that's not up to that level. And so it's a balancing act for sure. But once you find that their personal degree of green is healthy, then it's just a matter of saying now, you know, comparing these materials, what type of impact they get, or they'll give to the occupants, and then making those decisions more based upon that than just the money, the aesthetic, and the resale value.
Sure. And there's a changing tide of influence too. You came out with a stat from the NEHB that people would rather, a higher percentage of people would rather pay for a home that's healthier
Mm-hmm.
versus paying for more efficient components in the house, which I
Yes.
thought was a very telling statistic.
Well, it is. And I think that's because we all have decided, we all know energy efficiency is good for the bottom line. And we also know that most manufacturers don't make energy inefficient items anymore because we're savvy shoppers. Nobody walks into Home Depot and looking for a new furnace and says, give me the least efficient one you got, because I just don't care about the money I'm burning up every month. Of course, they're looking for a combination of initial cost, efficiency, longevity. They do all those calculations in their head, but generally speaking, energy efficiency is just a given to begin with. And so, any of these green building programs that are being used around the country that really focus on energy efficiency, to me, that's like focusing on building codes and building a home just to code, because just to code means it's just barely passed.
Yeah.
You know, we want to build homes, we want to provide materials, we want to have folks living in homes that are far beyond just the bare minimum. I'm dealing with a cabinet maker right now in New York. I'm trying to get information about the finishes that they use so I can determine whether or not it's good for the client. And the cabinet maker just says, "Don't worry, our finishes are at the high end of the VOC regulations, so we're good." Well, what does that mean? That means that if you're allowed to use 180 grams per liter of VOCs, you're using 180 grams, or does that, what do you actually are trying to say? We want products that are really, really healthy, not just scratching some surface, right?
Yeah. And I can see you probably come up against that all the time
Yep.
from suppliers, and they're not willing, or they're hesitant to give, and maybe they don't even know what's in their finishes, to be honest with you. But that's where education comes in. That's where shows like this, I think, are going to help, and people that are open to learning these type of things,
Sure.
builders like myself. So, you know, it might be a very good high-end finish that gives a great finished product and looks good in the house,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that it's not off-gassing at a terrible rate and it's toxic. And
Right. Again, having those conversations with the client and determining what's best for them. Um, that's really the key. So, I mean, looking at then the industry as a whole, what do you think the barriers are to getting the industry to sort of start changing? Is it just lack of education, lack of opportunity, maybe?
yeah, I would put education at the top of the list.
Okay.
Opportunity maybe second, but I see that changing.
Mm-hmm.
Your opportunity is going to change when the education level raises, and more clients are asking for healthier homes.
Mm-hmm.
But budget is also one. You know, the reality, even in the high end market, no one has an endless budget. There's
Right.
always a budget. So if we can find low hanging fruit to be the first items that start getting changed to a healthier, like paints,
Mhm.
um, air sealing, things like that. You mentioned in our podcast probably the single thing you thought would be the first step you take would be to have a good air cleaning, a whole house air purification system, which
Mhm.
a lot of our homes have that. So we're meeting step one.
Exactly.
Um, I'd like to actually talk offline to you and just get a list of 4 or 5 things that I could implement into my standard features going forward that wouldn't necessarily cost more money, or maybe they cost minimal more money, that I could actually promote and
Right.
say, hey, Greenside is a real healthy builder. And in addition to all this pretty stuff and
Mhm.
all the structural stuff that are, top notch and well above code, this is also what we do on the health side.
That's a great idea. I think that as long as it's still meeting again the intent of the project, it's not costing more because, as you say, there is no unlimited budget that's out there, and then it doesn't create any confusion on the job site. It's got to be something that folds right in, and certainly you and I can talk about that. We'll put together a list of ideas. Um, One of the barriers to this is, and we talk about education and opportunity. It's one of those chicken or the egg things too. It's like I can't tell you how many times I've talked to a builder and they'll say, you know what, I have never had a customer who's ever asked me about building a healthy home. Well, maybe they haven't asked you because they know you don't, and they know the type of builder you are. This is the way you do it. If you at least put it on your website, put it in your information that you are willing to look at these things. And so I don't know how you relay that to the consumer, but quite often one of the barriers to building healthy homes is the consumer themselves in their reluctance to trust their builder, to trust the process. And I don't blame them. I've dealt with tens of thousands of chemically sensitive clients over the years, and they are used to um, being poisoned from this and from that, buying something because they heard it was a good way to go and only find out that it didn't work for them. And so it's that constant disappointment. It's that constant feeling of, I just can't find anything that works. And so I think of a local project that we were on, a healthy home project just finished about a month ago. And I brought another client through the house, and just to see if she could tolerate it. And she walked in the door and started laughing because she couldn't believe she's actually walking in a brand new house, just barely finished, and she had no reaction whatsoever. She's been
Wow.
wanting to build a healthy home for the last 10 years, but she was afraid of taking that first step because what if it didn't work? We're wasting all this money. And so that's something that's really hard to get across, is that the feeling the client has, the consumer has, to the it will be okay, it will work. How do you prove that to people? And I think every time you have a home that's being built as a healthy or a healthier home, it's giving people the opportunity, if the customer is allowing it, to maybe have some walkthroughs and get people to come through and see that a healthy home doesn't have to be a really strange, bizarre looking house. It can look as beautiful as every other home you've built, but it just happens to be healthier.
For sure, for sure. And it's funny you mentioned that. It seems like the people that need a healthy home the most are probably the people most afraid to build that healthy home because of the
Yes.
reasons you just said. Yeah.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. And so, that's why we have plans to build a model healthy home up here and actually allow people to walk through it during construction, after construction, because we want people to see that it can be done. Maybe our aesthetic and our style will be not what you want. That's fine. That's an easy change, but it's just walking into a brand new built home with, you know 5,000 different materials in that house, off gassing, in a traditional home, 10,000 different chemicals. We want to show in a healthy home that that number is down considerably, down to a point where it's tolerable by most people with sensitivities. And the only way to prove that is to actually allow them to walk through one of these homes.
Yeah, I'd be on board for something like that for sure.
Fabulous. So I know we're getting close to time here, but one of the things I want to talk about, because we got some questions as well, but one of the things I wanted to chat with you too is, you mentioned um, having to go through the Great Recession, but you also had to go through COVID, and you had to go
Yes.
through the material shortages and labor shortages and so forth. But you guys, I mean, you guys just kept on going, and how did you manage to do that?
Yeah, it's funny. I joke with my wife about this because COVID lasted for 2 years,
Hmm.
and it didn't affect me at all,
Wow.
really. In terms of I was at work every day.
Hmm.
We got busier as it went on. More people wanted to build bigger
Yeah,
homes with amenities like sport courts in the basement,
sure.
swimming pools. All these luxury add-ons are not add-ons anymore. They're like standard, which is
Right.
crazy to me, but that's the reality of the world.
Hmm.
When COVID first hit, we were actually at the tail end of that healthy build for you,
Yeah.
and there was concerns with COVID. We were letting one trade in at a time,
Yeah.
whereas usually you'd have 5 or 6 guys, 5 or 6 different trades in the house. So that delayed us a bit, and then lead times obviously really got affected on that house a little bit, but the houses that we built after that in that period, we really got affected at lead time. Windows were crazy. Appliances are still out of whack.
Yeah.
We're still ordering appliances now when we go in for permit.
Mm.
So that's 14, 15-month
Wow.
lead time. But we have adjusted. I will say it's maybe not all the way back to normal, but pretty darn close. It's
Hmm.
99% normal compared to pre-COVID. Um, but yeah, it was certainly a challenge. And it was funny, that healthy home we were building, she was really concerned about COVID at the time.
Hmm.
So testing, masks, PPE, all that was happening when we were building that home.
Wow. And interesting. One of the things you said too was you got busier during COVID. We did too. And I think it's because of two things. First of all, you had everybody in the family now at home, working, learning, so forth at the kitchen table. And first of all, families determined right away there's not enough room in this house for everybody to do this. But one of the things that came out of this is, before COVID, we were spending about 80% of our lives indoors. Before COVID, during and after, it's more like 90%. And so this is why, one of the reasons why now people want to build homes maybe with a little more land, maybe a bigger home that has more amenities, because they realize, well, if something like this happens again and I'm sequestered to my house, I want to still have all those things that I used to have if I drove somewhere for it. I can't go to the club anymore and work out and swim. I guess I got to do it in my house. Or the kids are not going to school, therefore they're not getting recess every day. Let's put the sport court in the house, court in the house. And so we're seeing this across the country. These homes are being more for almost like becoming their own sanctuaries of all parts of life inside of that one home. And that really did change the build industry.
Yeah, the homes are becoming mini resorts,
Yeah.
because if this happens again, and if you listen to the experts, they say it's a matter of time before it does happen again.
Right.
uh, we're going to be put in the same position. We're going to be stuck in our houses, going to be wearing masks, all the whole nine. And if people have that resort at home, it won't be such an impact to them. A lot of our clients are coming from the city,
Mm.
and it's different when you're in the suburbs versus the city. If you're in the suburbs and you're in lockdown, you have a backyard, you can go out on your patio.
Mm-hmm.
In the city, maybe you have a 5x6 balcony you
Right.
can look out, or if you have a single family home, you have a postage stamp of a backyard. So we had a mass migration from the city out to the burbs, and that helped us as custom home builders that build in this area.
Mhm.
But it's certainly a change from pre-COVID.
Definitely. So I'm going to open this up for anybody who has any questions. I know Jay Watts, regular contributor here on the show, he said that healthy homes add great value to a home. Upscale bathroom or kitchens. Realtors will be selling this idea in the future, and that is true. Michael, a couple of weeks ago, I had Sheila Alston on, and she talked about wellness real estate and about how realtors across the country are learning more and more about healthy homes and wellness related homes so that they can start selling this to their clients and really upselling all these attributes that a home has.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that term. That's excellent. Wellness real estate.
Wellness
Yeah,
real
I,
estate.
I,
Yep.
I can certainly see how that's going to improve the value of a home when you're trying to sell all those different amenities.
For sure. And if you're looking at a home that for the most part, you're looking at a certain price range, well, maybe I'll go with the one that has not just the materials that don't have to be replaced right away, but I know that it's a healthier product. That even in the replacement of it or the maintenance of it, it's healthier to work with. I see a lot of homes now that are being brought to market that have, built-in infrared saunas and as you said, like sport courts, either in the backyard or maybe a basement that has a 12-foot high ceiling, so they can put a court downstairs as well. And so there's a lot that's going on now, basically to add wellness to the family's routine. And it just makes sense that the industry starts recognizing that.
Yeah, we have a couple houses on the boards right now in design that are putting saunas in their basement next to their exercise room, next to their sport court. So they have their own little, like you said, sanctuary.
Fabulous. Well, that's another thing we got to talk about that, because that's something we've been doing on homes for a while now, and I just think it's a brilliant idea. All right. So, what is the best way to get in touch with you if folks want to reach out?
Sure, probably the easiest way nowadays is to go on Instagram. You can just type in Greenside Design Build, and we should pop up. Also, our website, and also you can give us a call. It's probably the easiest way. We are in the western suburbs of Chicago. We are in the beginning discussions of moving outside of the market. We're looking in the Nashville area.
Hmm.
So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But generally, we're here in the Chicagoland area.
Beautiful. And folks, I can vouch for the Instagram. His Instagram is fantastic. You guys put out a lot of good content.
Yeah, thank you. We try to promote who we are, and a lot of people hire marketing companies to do their Instagram. Where I'm kind of opposed to that. I think be who you are, be real, and that'll come across. And then when people go to meet you in person, they're meeting what they see
Mhm.
on Instagram. That's something different. And so we try to post the pretty pictures,
Mhm.
like lots of people like to see that. But we do a lot of behind the scenes, behind the walls type of
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
A lot of construction. I'm a construction guy by my
Right.
heart.
Right.
That's all I know. So that's what we post out there. Same with John. He's really not a social media guy, but I try and drag him in. But yeah, we try and post who we really are and what we really offer.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think that to somebody who's really into construction, seeing pictures of, truss joists and things like that are just as sexy as looking at a brand new kitchen, right? It
Yeah,
just, because I too, I want to see the details. And it goes along the lines of this particular industry, this business, this clientele, all looking for transparency. That's what we want, is good communication and transparency.
yeah,
And nothing is perfect. Everything has downsides. So let's talk about that. Let's show that. And it's really nice to know that there's a custom home builder out there who is out there just showing this is who we are. This is who I am, and this is what you get. And it's not just great marketing and fancy labels. So thank you very much for doing that.
thanks. Thank you. Yeah, we try to convey trust too. And if someone sees, it's the everyday thing. I'm out this morning. I was out shooting Instagram. I pulled the phone out of my pocket and I just shoot what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And if I'm inspecting a job or doing a wall walk is another popular one where I have a foundation that's just poured. I'll walk the top of the foundation wall. Maybe not up to OSHA codes to be walking the top of a foundation wall before it's backfilled, but yeah, they didn't catch me. So,
But people want to see that. So
yeah,
we appreciate you showing that.
thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on the show today. It was an absolute pleasure, and I hope we can have you back sometime soon.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me on. And we definitely are going to talk offline. And I'm going to be posting this on my media. So any builders that are listening to this, you definitely have to make contact with Andy, even to just start your knowledge, your base knowledge of what Healthy Home is. And then you'll never know what could come from your clients once they know that you're a builder focused on this type of building.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Folks, thank you so much for joining us on the live stream today. This will be up on the Circle community within minutes, and we will see you again next week. Take care, everyone.